Let's talk about Quibi, or Quick Bites. I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. I'm going with Quibi. Basically, if you don't know what Quibi is, it's trending right now, and the idea behind it is it's supposed to be this app that you can get a 90-day free trial for at the moment. I don't know when they're going to change that to like 7 days or something more reasonable. But for now, you can get it for 3 months free. And it's basically mobile-only streaming, so you can only watch these shows on your cell phone. And they are 8-minute episodes. So that's a unique concept, and I think that's getting it a lot of attention, and that's causing people to be interested in it. But is this more than a gimmick, or have they actually done something original with their shows? That was the big question I had going into this. But before I answer that question, or at least my answer to that question, why don't you consider subscribing to this channel so you can see more videos like this one, and give me a like, because that makes me feel warm and fuzzy, as I always am so fond of saying. So, getting into Quibi, I watched 4 shows, or the 4 episodes of 4 shows that are available, and I'm going to review those shows briefly, but overall thoughts on the service, I feel like they haven't really come up with a novel new concept yet for a number of reasons. Now, I think this is interesting and it's kind of fun, but when you break it down, what they've essentially done is they've just taken shows that might not have thrived if they had just been released in a normal format, and they have edited them into 8-minute chunks. They haven't taken the time to actually make these shows more interesting to viewers if you only had 8 minutes to get them hooked. I was hoping that what they would do with this is that they would realize, there's a famous quote that Lindsay Ellis just drew to my attention in her recent review of Cats, which is really quite good. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. But the quote that she brought up is,
philosopher and media theorist Marshall McLuhan famously said, "The medium is the message." What did he mean by that? Simplistically, it's the idea that you can only receive an idea or a story through a medium.
And what I was expecting, maybe hoping here would be the case, is that there would be some targeted purpose to these 8-minute episodes. I was hoping that Quibi had this idea for making the new type of show, that they had cracked the way that consumers are engaging with entertainment these days, and they were going to make entertainment that would appeal more to consumers based on that. And I could have seen a number of ways that they could have done this. I feel like if they had given these episodes faster pacing, better hooks, things like that that could have drawn the viewer in, told it in media res, so that the story starts right into the action, and then maybe uses moderate use of flashbacks to establish what's already happened previously. But that's not what they do at all. So the first show that I watched was Most Dangerous Game with Liam Hemsworth and Christoph Waltz. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. The basic concept for it is that Liam Hemsworth is a guy named Dodge who is dying of inoperable cancer, and he has a ton of debt. So he decides to participate in this game where he will receive a ton of money, but he's going to allow these rich people to hunt him. And Christoph Waltz spends the first 4 episodes basically being an exposition machine, and basically spends just the first 4 episodes telling Liam Hemsworth the rules of the game. Now, again, this is really poorly done, considering that you might only watch an 8-minute segment of this. But it's just poorly done on a number of levels, even if it wasn't an 8-minute, episode show. It's poorly done because in the first 10 minutes, there's no hook. They have Liam Hemsworth go into a room and talk to Christoph Waltz. That is the first 8-minute episode. There's no visual stimuli. It's completely insane that they thought that this was the way to start the show. This was how they thought they could hook viewers in. The show is just hokey overall. Like naming the main character Dodge, it's like, oh, he's going to be on the run, get it? So he's Dodge. And then Christoph Waltz's character is named Miles Sellers, get it? Because he's selling people to be hunted. And it doesn't get much better from there. It's amazing to me because they've got these good actors. They've got Sarah Gadon, who I loved in Alias Grace. She's a fantastic actress. So you would hope that this might be good. And maybe it will be better once they actually get into the action. But they're not into the action yet, and it hasn't seemed particularly good to me so far. It's seemed pretty hokey, honestly. And really just a lot of exposition-laden dialogue trying to establish how likable Dodge is, which is, a lot of telling us how likable he is and how much Miles Sellers likes him, even though he's selling him to his death, which doesn't make a lot of sense, in my opinion. But it easily could have been more interesting if they had just started it in media res with Dodge already on the run from the hunters, instead of having him go into a room, learn the rules, and then go off to think about whether or not he wants to be involved in the hunt. And it's particularly glaring because they have the conversation with Christoph Waltz, and then they shoot back to a week earlier to establish more backstory, which is just terribly, terribly dull. So I can't believe they thought that was a great way to start that series. Maybe it'll get interesting once he's actually being hunted, but in the first 4 episodes, they've just gotten to the part of the story where he's going to be getting hunted by people, which would be a bad strategy in an hour-long episode to wait that long. But it's particularly bad in a show that is only releasing 8-minute segments at a time. The other show I watched was Survive, starring Sophie Turner and Corey Hawkins, and to me this was pretty much just as bad as Most Dangerous Game. It had similar problems in that I didn't watch the trailer for it before I started, so I didn't realize that it was going to be about surviving in the wilderness after a plane crash, because the first 8-minute episode makes it seem like it's going to be a mental health drama taking place in a facility. And then it's not until the 3rd episode, at the very, very end of the 3rd episode, that the plane crashes. And once again, I feel like it would have just been a much smarter choice to start with the plane crash. Now this one, I really think Sophie Turner and Corey Hawkins are doing great jobs. I've not been the biggest fan of Sophie Turner in the past. Her character in Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones, I unashamedly have always thought was just a despicable, whiny character. But here she's doing a very nice job, and I appreciate the chemistry that she's created with Corey Hawkins. But I feel like a lot of elements of this are just in poor taste, because to me, the mental health elements seem like they're in poor taste in a survival drama. If it was actually focusing on them as sometimes some very well-made dramas have done, it might be okay. But because they're using it as the backdrop for a survival story, which is just cheap escapism and a seemingly romantic, that's where it seems like it's going to me. Romantic survival drama, something like The Mountain Between Us with Kate Winslet and Idris Elba, if you've ever seen that movie. I think it's in poor taste. But I'm going to give it a chance to get better, but in the first 4 episodes, not that much has happened. It has all the same flaws that Most Dangerous Game has. Now, slightly better than these two, in my opinion, was Flipped with Kaitlin Olson and Will Forte, which is a comedy. And I feel like a comedy is a better idea for this format to begin with, because we watch 10-minute comedy segments on YouTube. Now, we would never pay for them, which I think is a problem with this, because I think generally speaking there's enough sketch comedy out there that we can get for free that we wouldn't really feel the need to pay for a streaming service to watch something like this. But I think it works better with the format, because at least in the first 10 minutes of this episode, I felt like I had a pretty good grip on what I was watching. Whereas with the other two, I'm still not entirely sure what I'm watching because they didn't set it up that well. But there's some unfunny gags in Flipped, but I feel like Will Forte and Kaitlin Olson are hilarious, and their ad-libbing is on point, and just overall, of the 3 shows, it was the one I enjoyed the most. But there's one more show that I didn't even realize existed before last night, and that show is When the Streetlights Go On. And this was an odd duck, because I assumed it was some kind of documentary or something when I saw the picture, so I didn't start it, but it actually started playing randomly after I had finished the most recent episode of Most Dangerous Game, and I was immediately intrigued by it, and it actually, I felt, was a good enough show that I think this might be the crown jewel of Quibi at this point, because I think it actually works in 10-minute segments, and it works with the 10-minute segments. It reminds me a lot of shows on HBO and Netflix, like 13 Reasons Why, and more recently Euphoria on HBO, but I think that it has a very, very intriguing story. The actors are good. It has some noteworthy people that you would normally associate with comedies, Tony Hale, Queen Latifah, but it seems to be a mystery thriller centered on teen characters. It starts off with a rather brutal murder, and it follows these teenage characters as they're grappling with the ramifications of that, and it has a lot of teen angst, which might not be your thing, but it was working for me, even though I'm not I haven't been a teenager for a very long time. But overall, I thought that this series set things up well with the time it was given, and it actually worked in 8-minute segments, and it drew me in just 4 episodes. It drew me in actually within an episode, which was the impressive thing. And what I thought Quibi would be trying to do is getting you hooked in 8-minute segments, making it so compelling, so brisk that you're drawn in immediately. And so there is hope for Quibi if they can make more shows like When the Street Lights Go On. But overall, I have to question the concept behind this service, because when you look at it, there doesn't seem to be any serious thought about what this is going to do for consumers, because unless you watch the episodes as they air, and they come out on a daily basis, which is maybe something I forgot to mention already, you are probably going to get behind unless you watch it on a daily basis on your metro ride or whatever. You can download them, which is good, because if you couldn't do that, I wouldn't see this being a very viable mobile streaming option. But you can download them, and they come out, on a daily basis. So you can download the 3 or 4 episodes of the shows that you're interested in and watch them on your drive to work. Don't do that. Or on your metro trip. And that would be viable. But the thing is, there's nothing stopping you from doing this with Netflix or with Prime Video or with practically any service. I think their HBO is really the only one that you can't really do this with. So you could already choose to do this with any show you choose. So what is Quibi bringing to this that's different? Well, as far as I can tell, there's only really 2 things that set Quibi apart. One, it's designed to be mobile friendly. So you can actually turn your phone like this, and they set it up so that the image will revert, so that you can look at it not horizontally but diagonally, and that it shifts so that you have a full image of the screen. So that's kind of cool, but I don't recommend you do it, because what happens is, I'll try to find a good image to demonstrate this so I'm not just describing it, but essentially, if you had 2 people standing next to each other, what would happen is if you turn the phone sideways, it would crop, so you would just see one of the people, probably the person reacting or the person talking, which is functional, but it would be just better to just hold the phone the way you normally would when watching a streaming show, and then you would see both people in the frame. And there were some scenes I didn't investigate this too long, but there were some portions of the plane crash that was just incomprehensible when you were holding the phone vertically instead of horizontally, and there were some gags that were completely neutered and flipped when you did that, because it cropped things out of the frame that were essential for understanding the humor. It's interesting to me because it has a significant downside, because the first thing that I did when I got the app was try to figure out if there was a way to watch it on my smart TV, and there isn't. Yeah, I'm sure some other person will find a workaround, possibly an illegal workaround, but I'm not going to go there. Yeah, if someone finds a legal workaround, please let me know, because I would really like to try to watch these on my TV. I don't really see the point of watching something on my phone when I have a TV. But it's prohibited. So there's a significant downside to this service. Instead of being an upside where you're like, yes, a mobile only streaming service, to me, it's an actual negative. but maybe there's some advantage to this that I haven't thought of. I feel like it's more of just a novelty than something that actually is functionally helpful. So I don't really recommend, this service has to find its footing. If they can figure out what makes their stories special, if they can figure out what is the purpose of the format that they're using, what they can do that nobody else can do, or that nobody else is currently doing, then they might have something. And I feel like they're very close to being there with one show when the street lights go on. But otherwise, I feel like they've got some work to do, because I think 2 of their 4 shows that I investigated were pretty clunky, and I probably wouldn't keep the service just for those shows. I might keep it for when the street lights go on. Now, I will say they do have a lot of content right now, so there's possibly other things that are very good that I could have investigated and haven't yet. And if there's some show that you think I'm missing out on that makes a better case for the advantages of this service, let me know in the comments, because I would totally check it out and review it here on this channel. So that's my thoughts on Quibi so far. If you are interested in seeing more videos like this one, please subscribe to the channel, and I hope that you have gotten some good insights into this service from my brief little talk about these shows. That's Plot First's review of Quibi.